Hello, everyone. We have today with us a very special guest, Leslie Greenwood. I'm very excited to host her today. She's the founder of Chief Evangelist Consulting and the co founder of Wednesday Women. She's known for her innovative strategies in fostering impactful communities without following traditional structures. She was also VP of Member Success at Pavilion, where she built and led a team that created member experience and helped grow the community from 2,000 to 10,000 members. In fact, I'm a member of Pavilion myself, Leslie. So welcome and great to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat more about community. I mean, you just can't stop me from talking about community. I think one of my posts said, they're giving me the mic. I may never give it back. So excited.
Right. So great. Let's jump into it. Can you give us a quick overview of your journey so far? Like what prompted you to focus on community powered growth or like evangelist led growth in B2B?
Yeah. When I started, I think I've always been a community person. So, when I worked at my first SaaS company, they had a Facebook community, and I was the one always in there, like connecting people and answering questions. Like, I just love that part of it. When I joined Pavilion, I was first joined as a member, and then I convinced Sam to hire me. And I was employee number 5, and like as you said, helped build out the member experience, everything post enrollment, including what do you want to call it? Collections at one point. So if you didn't pay your bill, I might call you because otherwise you'd end up on my churn list, and we weren't about to have that. So we did everything. And, as I did that job, I came in kind of as customer success, retention, renewal, people getting value, et cetera. But then, we did programming, we did events, we did, everything. And as I left Pavilion, I thought, like, what do I want to be when I grow up? Now, as we discussed earlier, I am 53. I decided my next version 12 was going to be this at 50, maybe 51. But yeah, no, I love the community aspect of it. I love the connections. I love the portions that, make the intangibles and make really, you can see the difference it makes in people's lives. And so that's kind of what led me there. And I'm still a member. I don't work there. I'm still a member. I'm still an active member. When I travel, I go see members all over the world. I'm planning an event in Dublin with Pavilion members there. So when I go in October, super exciting.
Awesome. And how does this community-led growth like lead to business impact, right? Like ARR growth, go-to-market motion support. Like, why should people build communities?
Mm-hmm.
And how do we'll come to how they build communities, but why should they build communities?
Yeah. First, I want to go back. I actually didn't answer your first question. Was like, why do I believe in this evangelist-led growth? Not that we need anything other hyphen-led growth, but in Pavilion, for the first year and a half, for the first at least 6 months I was there, we didn't even have marketing. It was all about creating an experience beyond expectation, which is part of, building evangelists. If you saw somebody had a baby, you sent them a onesie. If they got a new job, you sent them a bottle of wine. You just paid particular attention, and it really paid attention to their experience. And that's how Pavilion grew. People went out and they said, I'm a member of Pavilion. Look at the onesie they sent me. And then all of a sudden, I remember once Kyle Lacey, now he's fairly influential, made a post. And then I just watched 16 applications come in. No one paid Kyle Lacey to make that post. And the applications just rolled in. And so those are evangelists that really help grow the company from the very beginning. And you'll see that in other companies that are not membership communities as well. Like think of HubSpot, or think of, even things like Sephora in B2C. Like people just talk about them because they love it. They feel connected to it. And then that leads to growth. So that answered your first question. Could you repeat your second question? Because now I've forgotten it.
Yeah. So, it's kind of related, which is like, what is the business impact from an ARR or go-to-market motion perspective to have a healthy community? I know the answer, but I would love to hear your version.
Yeah. Well, if you're in a B2B SaaS company, so there's of course many different versions of community. I liken it to Kleenex. We really need a tissue. We say we want a Kleenex. That's like the way we use the word community. And then there's like the scratchy Kleenex that will like make your nose bleed, or the scratchy tissue. And then there's the one that's super plush. So we use the community term kind of loosely. So, membership communities or communities of practice, and then B2B communities that are around a brand. there's a lot of different ways that you can use community. So then there's obviously a lot of different ways that you can impact ARR. So David Spinks from CMX, very much a community expert, he came up with the spaces model, which is defining the different business outcomes you can have from community. So when you think about it, you may have a community that's a support community. So like you go to AT&T and you go answer your questions, and it reduces their cost of support, per ticket. You could have a product, a product feedback community. The ones I usually work with are more acquisition, then contribution, and then more of the customer success. So I particularly focus on the part that does grow ARR, that doesn't just reduce cost and things like that. So when you talk about, acquisition, if you had an open community all about a grand topic that's important to your audience, not about Sprouts, about the challenges of understanding your buyer, or even a larger topic. But Sprouts was kind of like, you hosted it, but you're almost like the sponsor.
Mhm.
And so then you're listening to you've got, we talk about voice of the customer. There's your voice of the customer all day long, every day. Then you identify people who talk about certain keywords, and then maybe they're the people you put over to, sales, or you enter them as a community qualified lead. I mean, there's so many different ways that you can influence growth through community, especially with those business outcomes. But then also when you think about one thing, I'm very much into the feel of a community, what the bonds that people make. If I'm in your community and I feel a certain way about it, like I've gotten support, I've met people, those positive feelings that I have are also then by default attached to your company. So my positive feelings get attached, and that means I'm more likely to talk about you. I'm more likely to say, hey, you should look, if you're looking at X, Y, and Z, why don't you look at Sprouts too? Just because of those, feelings and thoughts that I have about you that I've gained through community.
Sure. And I have, just had a question in mind. If you look at the communities, like let's divide them, membership versus free, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then company branded versus, like you said, topic branded,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like let's say Pavilion is a great example of membership community, high end, right? And 2,000 to 10,000 members. Like, how does that growth work? Versus something like we were discussing marketing ops.
Mm-hmm.
That's a free community, but again, growing like crazy.
Yeah.
That's about a topic, right? Like it's all marketing individuals coming
Yep.
together. And
Yep.
then there'll be something like, let's say, a clay.com, right? And they'll have their own Slack community on the company, how to use Clay, how to use the product, right?
Yeah.
Like, so how, walk us through like how these things differ and how do you grow these different types of communities?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think really on the membership communities, obviously the fee-based membership communities, there's a little bit more buy-in because you're laying out your credit card. Personally, I'm not into anything for free. I think you should pull out your credit card, even if it's for $1, to become a member of something, because it indicates some sort of, intention. But that marketing ops, I'm going to put in the same bucket. It's just that you may have less engagement, in marketing ops because the predominance of the members are free, but that community is built so well, you have a lot of engagement. Then you have, if you think about HubSpot, their community was built, I think, originally, or if we look at, HubSpot, it was built about inbound. It's about the topic of inbound. That's what they evangelized, et cetera. Now, I'm sure they have a support version of the community. I think am I in the founders version of their community now? Like HubSpot has all kinds of communities within now their community, that don't necessarily, it's not for HubSpot, it's for founders, it's for women sales leaders, but they keep us in their ecosystem,
Right.
et cetera. And then there are ones that are really just like we said earlier, like maybe more support communities. Like I have a question and they say, go to the community for support. So there's different ways and different goals. The ones that we talk about mostly are acquisition. Like if HubSpot makes me feel great by being in their founders community, I'm going to continue to want to use HubSpot, and then I could just zip over and ask some questions too. It's just convenient.
And what are the secrets for building a great community and then engagement within the community? Like how do you drive engagement, right? Like any new founders or other ones want to build that. What are
Yeah.
your like tips for them?
Yeah, well, here's the first tip is one is not everybody should build a community. Not everybody needs one, and not everyone can support one. So I cannot tell you how many people I've talked to. They come to me, they want to tell me about their community idea, and I'm like, no. Or they don't really, like, from a founder perspective or from whoever's in charge of building the community. There's a couple roadblocks, which is one, time. It does take time. You have the infrastructure building, you have the, program building, you have the event process, you have all these processes. How are you going to get people in? How are you going to tag them? How are you going to monitor them? And you really, if you're going to build a real community, you need someone full-time dedicated to the community. Now, it doesn't, well, I'll say dedicated. It doesn't have to be someone's full-time job, maybe when you first get started. But like, I won't work with anybody that won't have a dedicated manager. It can't be your social media manager's extra job, because it needs there's a skill set. It needs time and energy. And what people don't realize is that this time, whatever you buy for your platform costs money, human costs, involved with that, plus support from marketing, plus support from RevOps, plus all these other things. It's not a cheap endeavor. And it's also not something you're going to see ROI on. Like, you don't launch a community and then all of a sudden 7 people end up in your pipeline. It's like you launch a community and then maybe hopefully at 18 months, you're going to start seeing these positive things. And I mean, I will basically just tell a founder, there's nothing you're going to put on a board slide about this community for 18 months. Like, don't put that you paid for it,
Right.
but you're not going to put any ROI on it. And so, I mean, that's the biggest challenge is understanding the true investment that a well-run community needs. I think your second question was about engagement. And, part of that is just listening to your customers. I'm working with a new customer. We're going to deploy a survey. I've done some interviews, I've listened to calls, but like, I need a broader sample. So I'm going to do a survey about their program offerings to figure out what the members really need. And so you have to have so many ears to the ground to understand. And then when you think about it, your members are a little bit of your product. They're humans. What you joined, Pavilion as a CEO for right now may change in 6 months, may change again in 6 months. And so if I think that I've gotten down, understand fully the community needs, I'll be wrong in 6 months. And so it's this like amorphous gray blob that's always changing. It changes with the economy. It changes with the members. It changes, with everything.
Right. And so can you walk us through the 2,000 to 10,000 member journey at Pavilion? Like, what were some of the things you guys did successfully to grow the community?
Yeah. Well, one is we put in processes and we put in some people. I think honestly, Sam was doing member interviews at one point. So, we had people doing member interviews. I actually did, I don't know how many member interviews I did. We put in a real onboarding process. So not just emails. There was a point where we called every new member within 4 business hours of joining. So, and that goes into that bucket of beyond your expectation. Like, as a CEO member, yes, you pay a little bit more, but a regular member doesn't pay more than a couple thousand. At that time, it might've been just 1,000. And I'm providing them an enterprise level experience at a SMB price. And those kinds of things, help do that. So putting in processes, we had to put in a phone system, a texting system, and a support system, a ticketing system, you name it. But the most important part was that we didn't let all of the systems and technologies divert us from the members. Right. And that's where I think, like, when we talk about sales and everything, they're like, oh, I can use this sequence and this auto AI bot and this, but it just takes them further and further from their customers, which is the thing that, in my opinion, why I love to talk about evangelism, is the one thing that takes you further and further from the people that are going to buy your solution. So that's one reason why I love community.
Interesting. And how do these potential members hear about you? Like, how do you generate organic virality? Do you use ads as well? Like, how do you acquire these members?
You mean for a Pavilion?
For Pavilion, and starting with.
Yeah, well, back in the day, there was no paid ads. it was all organic. It was all just word of mouth marketing, lots of buzz. Chief also did the exact very similar thing. If you saw the Chief green sweatshirts that people would get, and they, post about it and things like that. So a lot of it was what we are, viral marketing, social selling, influencer marketing. I mean, a lot of it was that back in 2020 when we really didn't have names for those kinds of things.
Right. And like today, if someone wants to build a community, what are some of the things you will mention in terms of spreading the buzz and getting more people enrolled? Like, what are some of the things which will work according to you for a
Yeah, yeah.
community?
Yeah, well, I mean, the first thing I work with every customer of mine on what I call this is my community POV document. It's like really understanding like who are the personas in your workspace, what motivates them, what other communities are they in, what are their aspirations, so that you can really understand like who's there and why, at least why right now. Um, and then, I mean, that's the first thing. You have to spend a lot of time planning. I mean, it's just like when you build a product. I mean, you have to really understand your customer so that you can, over deliver and provide them a value beyond your gadget,
Right.
and gizmo and app. So there's a lot of pre-planning that goes into even launching it. And then and I'll also say intention. And the same as with a founder. Like if your intention from the moment you make your first sale is that customer is going to feel amazing and is going to feel some kind of connection beyond just pressing the buttons, on your program, then you have a higher chance to be building these evangelists. And that's why I love to talk about this with founders, especially earlier stage, because I know that they're busy and they have all the other things that they're working on, but just like take a second and stop and think about your customer and who they are and what they want, and give them a little extra to start with, because they could be the beginning of that snowball that, takes you up and to the right. Although maybe on the screen it just said left. My hand might have gone left. I don't know.
Right. No, great. But just double clicking on that, right? So, like say, let's take marketing ops as an example.
Mhm.
It's a community for marketing professionals,
Mhm.
right? Marketing ops professionals,
Mhm.
and you've got to like let's say 100 members. It's a free community.
Mhm.
You've understood that. You have done some positioning. How do you go from 100 to 10,000 members? Like,
Mhm.
how will you get these next? How do you identify who will be these next 9,900 people
Mhm.
who
Mhm.
join this community? How do you reach out to them?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that they reached out to them. I would say they do a really good job with content.
Right.
In marketing ops, it's so intricate, and there's so many different, marketing ops programs you have to know. And there are already user groups like Marketo user groups and all this kind of stuff. So it's like they've done a really good job with their content, very robust on their content, very robust on their events and informal education as well. Now I can't speak, I haven't been with them since the beginning, just recently,
Yep.
but a lot of it is just the quality of the content education they provide. They just had their first big like Mopsapalooza last year, and that created so much buzz and excitement. And that itself created a lot of those evangelists out there talking to people and telling people about their experience and buying marketing ops branded high top sneakers.
Right. Right. Interesting. So using content events,
Yep.
and that is where, like, for creating the content, is that where the marketing team comes in? Like,
Yeah, I would say the marketing team comes in, like they do, a lot of free communities then rely on sponsorships. So, they have a good network of sponsors. And so a lot of that is collaborated between their sponsors, like the thought leadership that the sponsor brings in collaboration with what the team at marketing ops brings as well.
right.
So that's a lot of where, that kind of content ideation comes from. And then they do have an amazing marketing team. And if you go look at their website, I'm just like, oh, one day, please, could one of my websites look even half this good?
Right. Great. And just extending that, right? So you have marketing providing the content. What are the other pieces of the organization which have to come together? Like you talked about RevOps and others. Can you talk about, like, to make a successful community, what are the other functions who have to contribute to it and how?
Mhm. It's honestly, it's everyone. I mean, it truly is everyone. Like, you need buy-in from the top. The CEO has to understand the value, to lay out that money for 18 months to 3 years to be a mature community. You need marketing, you need customer success, because maybe they have their customers in there that are up for renewal, so they're going to look at their activities. Product for sure should be in there, even if they're not, like, they don't have a product feedback channel. Like, you should be listening to what people are saying. You should have keywords marked in there. Let's see what else. Community marketing, sales, should be in there, but in a very minimal presence. Don't be pitching your products in the middle of the community. You will, well, one, don't do it in Pavilion for sure. I used to have to throw people out for that. Like, I did actually throw people out. I had lots of very tense conversations. But even if it's your own community, like, you don't want to be going DMing. No one's going to come back if you keep sending them a mass message every week about your specials.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the most irritating thing, right? Like,
yeah.
In fact, Doug actually mentions that this immediate impact of member interviews is key. And he says,
Say that again.
So Doug Lehman, he left a comment.
Okay.
He mentioned, like, immediate impact of member interviews is key. Engagement and being responsive. So he said, well played there.
Yep. Being responsive. Yeah. And that's why it's funny, even things like when I'm coaching teams, like I'm coaching a community assistant team right now. It's like they've answered the question, but they answered it in private, and it's in a public channel. So even if you do that in the public channel, you say, hey, Karan, thanks for chatting.
Right.
I'm so glad we got that resolved.
Right.
Because everybody's looking at that, and their impression is that you didn't answer the question, when indeed you did. And so that even needs to be marketed outside. And so, yes, Doug, you're right on.
And then, no, this is great, actually. I mean, responding in public. There are so many companies which are building in public now on LinkedIn and getting great response. So I think, there's something to that authenticity, which goes a long way. Coming to other points, Leslie, like, what are the go-to-market tools or platforms which you're using for community building, or like for GDM in general? Like, any tool recommendation?
I mean, most of the, because of my network, which is highly Pavilion, I was paid to engage with members, so I probably know 4,000 people. Most of my communities that I work with are on Slack, because that's where their people live. I forget, someone told me they were going to try to migrate their go-to-market community from Slack to another platform. I'm like, oh, good luck with that. Like, I can't imagine getting a seller off Slack when they're already on there all day for work and they're going to go log into a different platform. So, I mean, there are plenty of platforms. I use primarily the home base is Slack. I oftentimes will layer over a program called Disco on top of it. They have a full community platform, but I just don't use the community chat part, because they have a bi-directional sync to Slack. So you could be in the hub and Slack just like that. So it removes that fear of change, to logging into one other place. I oftentimes will use Common Room within my communities, especially larger ones, that you need to understand your metrics. You need to understand who's saying what, who are your champions. They actually have expanded into almost probably something like you. Right. So maybe I shouldn't say that. I only use it for the community part, though.
No, that's totally fine. No, I've heard good things about them, and I think the market is big. So great. No, these are some good suggestions. So Slack primarily.
For me.
Got it. And like, the other thing is, like, when you're building these communities, right? Like you said, you need dedicated people. What's that profile like? Like, the community managers, like, if you were to recruit someone to own it, what are you hiring for? What will that process be like? If someone, like, let's say someone came to you and said, become a part of the VP of community and build your team. The community manager, what will that interview look like? What are the skills you're looking at? Who's that person?
Yeah, if I'm looking for just community managers, in the community world, a community manager is not really a manager. It's just a community person, a community associate, let's say. If I'm looking for a community manager, I actually hired probably 20 people at Pavilion, and my team was 18 at its largest. I had people from enterprise rent-a-car. I had ex-teachers, ex-teacher administrators at schools. Teachers were my best hires because they know how to explain, they know how to influence, and if they can influence 4-year-olds, they can certainly influence CROs. Sometimes it's the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, I hired HR people. I actually never hired a community person. I never hired anyone with community experience. Now, that was an error I made because my directors needed to have community experience. Like I needed stronger directors to handle that part. So for maybe a director level, I would ask for someone with community experience. Otherwise, I'm looking for customer service. I'm looking for someone who really wants to help people, who wants to be a connector, who likes to learn. I mean, I learned everything I know about GTM through just lurking Pavilion. Like I didn't know what a CRO was when I joined Pavilion, and now put me on a call with any CRO and I will handle myself as if I've done the job.
Right.
So people that are hungry to learn and understand and just really have that people skill is really what you're looking for in that
Super
role.
interesting. Like that comment around, I never had hired like previous community managers. I always hired from outside, and teachers are the best at that. So revealing. Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing. Like that's great. And at the director or VP level, do you just look at like their past experiences, or are there other qualities which will make them great?
It really depends on what I would need them for.
Right.
Do I need them for like data? Do I need them running numbers, understanding all the inputs that go into engagement? Because like when you said, how do you get good engagement? Well, first let's define engagement. Is it what you see on Slack? Is it what you see at events, virtually, in person? Your classes, like what all is included in that, and how are we going to measure that? So it's like, do I need a data person? Do I need a community ops person? So I need someone who can hook up all my tools together, which is really probably more of a marketing ops person or rev ops. I need a rev ops person, but just for community. That would be my dream. I would love to have run a community that had its own rev ops person to do all the stuff.
Right.
So it really depends on what you're needing, or do you just need a really good leader who will, because a lot of times community managers are a bit more junior. Do you
Right.
need just a really good leader who will teach them how to grow in their careers and how to, be professionals and how to interact with people that are probably, quite a few levels higher in their, you know, in their career journey,
Right.
but you're still feeling comfortable in your own skin to have that conversation with a CEO, et cetera.
Great. Uh, Leslie, we are coming to the end. This was fascinating. They say save the best for the last. So, can you tell us a little bit more about the Wednesday Women platform? How
Ah,
has it evolved since inception, and what's the impact it has had on women leaders, entrepreneurs? Like,
yeah.
super excited about this one.
Awesome. Thank you so much for asking me about this. It is totally my passion project. So, Wednesday Women started as a single post. I made a post, who are the women CEOs that should be in my feed. I live in B2B SaaS, and I didn't see them in LinkedIn, and that post became quite popular. And then I had a guy from Fiverr go and like take all that information and like put their titles and everything in it. And then as I saw other posts, I did the same thing. And then I just started dropping my very fancy Google sheet around LinkedIn. You want to follow more women? Here you go. Here's 100. Here's my Google sheet. And I finally dropped it in my co-founder, Melissa Moody's post that she also made. And, she at the time was the CMO and co-founder of Gated. She has 14 years at Google. She's now the CEO of Matcha. And she's like, do you always want this to live in a Google sheet? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I was just making a Google sheet.
Right.
And, so the inception was her and I just talking about it, and knowing that, we were both had other jobs. We both had families. What could we do to make an impact? Because we know we can't change everything, but we could do one thing to make a ripple. And you'll see that in our marketing about making a ripple. And that was doing these features. We feature now 2 women every week, 2 executive women leaders. And we ask them questions that are more than just their title. Like, who are they behind I'm the CMO of X? And it started with there. So a year ago, April, we made our first post. We had 0 followers. We had, made a very basic website. and made a LinkedIn post. And now last night we pushed past 6,100 followers on a business page in just a bit over a year. We just became a business in August and brought on our first sponsor in December. And so the impact we're seeing is like today, I mean, we are probably tagged in 5 to 6 posts a day. You know, something like, well, I think Wednesday Women might have an opinion on this. Like if someone makes a post and every person they nominate or talk about is a man. And so it's like we have created evangelists, and those evangelists go out and, you know, talk about us. And we are not a community. So you can't join Wednesday Women. People will call themselves members of Wednesday Women. And they tell people to join Wednesday Women, but we're a group creating community around a mission.
Wow, fascinating. No, we need so much more of that. And thanks for all the work on that, Leslie.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. And lovely having you here today. And yeah, look forward to continuing the conversation.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This is great fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.